Hello and welcome back to our discussion on communication. Again, my goal is to make sure that you begin to communicate like a pro, not only in your professional life, but your personal life, your family, your friends, your circle of influence. It is so extremely important that you learn to communicate. As an attorney, unfortunately, I made the bulk of my wealth by way of people's inability to communicate. And that's not a good feeling. Unfortunately, as a nonprofit pro, we had to help children who unfortunately were from families and parents who did not have the skill sets to process their feelings and to communicate. They're in effect impacting their income, their ability to take care of themselves, their ability to process their emotional feelings, unfortunately resulting in the abuse and use of substances and drugs. And so it seems like every facet of decades of my careers have been impacted by communication or lack thereof. And most importantly, not only communication on a peripheral level, but on an interpersonal level as well. So my goal in sharing these skills, tips, and tricks with you and synthesizing the information provided by researchers, scholars, and people who are opinionated in the fields of communication and alike is to bridge that gap from the rhetoric to reality, to show you what it looks like. Some of these theories that have been produced and created and developed and labels that have been given to communicative processes. How does this look in real life? How does it play out? And so again, these modules are intended to provide you with a gap or bridging the gap between communication as it has been crafted and created by the masters, by PhDs and scholars, to the practical application of people truly using them to create a better life for themselves, to be better students, better humans, better professionals, better spouses, partners, mates, roommates. So with that being said, this module is a wrap up of what we've discussed in the previous modules. And remember, we have talked about the definition of communication. We've talked about the definition of interpersonal communication. We've talked about some of the breakdowns and just slowing down the frame of communication and what that looks like from the various models that researchers have crafted and developed. And lastly, we talked about what this looks like in terms of the span of our lives. That communication isn't just a moment that happens and it poofs, it's gone. Actually, communication is more than just a fleeting moment. It is a moment that is continuous, that not only impacts your future relationship with the person, but it also changes you as well as the people in that communicative circle, the receivers or third-party communicators. It changes their dynamics and their perception forever. So words are permanent, whether we mean or intend to say them or not. A lot of times we also talked about in previous modules how we have to apologize for the words that come out of our mouths and to tell the person who's on the other end of that sender-receiver message or that end of communication that we really didn't truly mean to say that. When in essence, the art of perfecting interpersonal communication alleviates a lot of the burdens of you having to apologize because you have an opportunity to process your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions before you categorically place words to them. It gives you an opportunity to understand the cultural differences that are in and present in a situation, as well as understanding that while you may think or say something, it may not be received by the person on the other end of that message the way you intended it to be received because of the manner upon which they interpret your message. We're going to delve more into future modules about body language and nonverbal communication and how that too impacts the process of communication. But for now, as a summary, let's remind ourselves what we've discussed in previous modules so far. We've talked about the fact that communication lies at the core of our lives and our relationships. That communication is not only a thing, but it's actually a process in which it enables us to construct shared meanings and feelings with others. It is extremely important in interpersonal communication relationships that we understand communicative factors such as the identities, the motivations, the perceptions, as well as communication resources. Now, also, we have to turn our attention to the content upon which messages are exchanged and the context upon which that message is exchanged within. Once we've considered communicators in the content and the context, we then have to consider the other things that shape and mold aspects of communication. Noise, for instance. We talked about the fact that noise plays an important role in the dissemination of messages from the sender and the receiver and all of the communication modalities. We also have to understand that communication occurs in multiple contexts and that in and of itself also influences communication. We've mentioned the cultural relationships to communication, as well as the fact that relational tensions of autonomy, connectedness, a person's need to feel connected, a person's need to feel opened or closed, to have predictability in the conversation and the exchange of communication, or novelty plays an important role. We also mentioned that a family's cultures, ethnic, racial, religious, national, gender, and the like also play an important role in effective interpersonal communication. Lastly, we mentioned that there are multiple phases of the lifespan, that communication is something that we carry with us from birth till the end of time. We also understand that these phases of communication have been broken down into 4 aspects, which is early and late childhood, adolescence and young adult, middle adulthood, and while many scholars and researchers call it elder years, I prefer to call it the years upon which you are hot and popping. I'm not going to say I'm an elder. I'm not. I refuse. It's hot and popping. It's those ages where you're hot and popping. That time of your life where you have experienced it all, you've seen most of it, you have advised people on how to get through it, and now you're just at the stage where you just like, you're hot and popping because you know it all. You're full of wisdom. That's my new term. It's not elder. It's hot and popping. All right, so that is your summation of the first area and module of what we're going to call the introduction to interpersonal communication. Mind you, this information is so valuable. Like, if you take this to heart, you are going to be in meaningful relationships. You're going to have the best relationship with yourself. You're going to have the best relationship with your family, your kids, with people you meet, your colleagues, your coworkers, your roommates, your classmates, your friend circles, your sports, your teams. This is so fundamentally important. And I wish everyone had to take this class like they had to take math or they had to take reading growing up, because communication is the key to the kingdom. So until the next module, see none, hear none, speak none. It's all about interpersonal communication. See you next time.